You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is April 18th, 2025, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we're bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. Today we have an exciting show on some of the big happenings in education. Obviously, Trump has ended the... some of the big happenings in education. Obviously, Leon, we're getting some feedback. In education, obviously.
Leon, I don't know if that comes from me.
I don't know. I'm hearing. We're getting an echo. Something is. Maybe somebody has some device on. Getting an echo. Something is. Maybe somebody has some device on.
Larry, do you have anything on your end? Jason, I have nothing here.
It's weird because nothing was happening. Hold on a second. Let me try unplugging my. It's weird because nothing was happening. Hold on a second. Let me try unplugging my. It's weird.
Crap. I can, for the life of me, see. I can, for the life of me, see. I can, for the life of me, see. Oh, jeez.
So I was muted and nothing is changing when I mute. So there's something going on somewhere else. And nothing is changing when I mute. So there's something going on somewhere else. And nothing is changing when I mute. So there's something going on somewhere else. And nothing is changing when I mute. And nothing is changing. So Leon, if we end the feed and restart, would you be able to restart on your end, or will you need because I'm thinking maybe we just all need to leave the studio and come back because something weird is happening here.
Well, why don't we just try leaving the studio and come back? Let's try.
Will you be able to get the feed started again, or will it?
This is what I'm wondering about. The last time we did that, we had
be able to get the feed started again, or will it?
This is what I'm wondering about. The last time we did that, well, let's try leaving the studio. Right, that's the best we could do right now. And if I can't, so guys, you could call James. Well,
okay. Okay. No. Let's try exiting and coming back in, I guess, then.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Let's try exiting and coming back in, I guess, then.
Okay. All right.
Let's try exiting and coming back in, I guess.
Larry, could you exit for a second and try and come back? Larry, could you exit for a second and try and come back?
What do you want me to do something?
Yes, could you just exit the studio?
How do I do that? What do you want me to do something?
Just leave the leave the broadcast and come back to the same link you used before. Is one of them causing it? Is one of them causing it? Oh shit. Let's see. Okay, let me set this here. Okay, Larry, you're here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you. We have no echo. Okay, we good. You and I good, right? Okay,
Yeah, we're good.
Let me bring in Jason.
Jason's the problem.
Jason, talk to me.
No. When I came back in, the echoing was gone. So, yeah, I'm not sure what the issue is, but there's
sure
nothing.
Gone.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself.
Okay.
Well, since we haven't stopped the feed and you're not sure whether you can restart it on your end, Leon, maybe I should just restart from here and James can cut it. We'll have to cut
out. We'll cut out the first few minutes. It's fine. So
okay.
let's just start as we just came in.
Okay. So we'll restart from here.
Yes.
It is April 18th, 2025, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. And today we have a special show. We are going to be talking about the big changes happening at the Department of Education. Obviously, Trump is doing a lot of things that are shaking things up. So that's going to be an interesting show. And we have a special guest to talk about that on our show, Larry Sand. He is the a former teacher and the founder of the California Teachers Empowerment Network, and he also runs a column off of For Kids and Country called The Sandstorm, and those columns also appear in other places as well. So you can check some of that out. In fact, let me share screen real quick while I am talking about that so that we can show people where to go for this information. Leon, can you bring this up, the share screen real quick, just so people can see this real quick? Yeah, you can go to forkidsandcountry.org to find out more. And also the California Teachers Empowerment Network as well. So we'll talk about that. And we've had Larry as well in the past. So you can check out some of our previous episodes if you want to find out a little bit more about his history. But before we get into the show, let me introduce you to the rest of the panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon the Word Brathwaite, Last Word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have our guest, Larry Sand. My name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So we always like to start out the show with a Liberty quote, and so I'm going to jump to that. And this time, I think we have kind of an interesting quote from Albert Einstein. So, Leon, maybe you could share that real quick. And the quote is education is what remains after one has forgotten everything he learned in school. It is a miracle that curiosity survives formal education. And to me, that really describes what comes out of our government monopoly on education. I mean, I know that a lot of the stuff I felt like I was learning didn't really stick, and maybe those things that were important, there might have been a few things here or there. What do you guys think about this quote? I really feel like it characterizes a lot about the current problem.
Indeed. Larry, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, curiosity you have for your entire life, but obviously you only go to school for 12 to 16 years or so. And it's like everything else Einstein said. It's really good. It's wonderful. I mean, it's just, and we need to keep being curious, and we need to keep digging into issues, because, especially in education, because so much has changed. We'll get into that shortly, obviously. Since I was a kid, I went to school in the 50s. My mother could send me off to school and be confident I was getting a good education. That ain't true no more. Your little boy might come home one day and decide he's a little girl, or he might decide that Israel is worse than the Nazis. I mean, there's no telling what they're learning in school these days. It's not all bad for sure, but parents don't know, and parents have to quiz their kids every day when they come home from school. Just say things like, "Oh, hi, Johnny. Did you learn anything interesting today? Did anything your teacher said sound strange? Do you feel uncomfortable? No? Okay, good. Let's talk again tomorrow." Yep. Okay.
Totally. I totally agree. I mean, our public schools have really become indoctrination camps, really. Our little kids, just like you said, Larry, kids go off and they come back somebody different, They might think a little boy, a little girl kind of thing that you have said. That is absolutely true. So I think Albert Einstein is perfectly correct that curiosity, God willing, will survive at the end of this so-called education that we are seeing right now, because it's really not education, it's indoctrination. So Albert Einstein is absolutely correct.
It would be wonderful to know, if he's still alive, what he would have to say about all this.
Yes. Good point. Good point. Yes.
Great mind.
Well, especially too about things like some of the woke education, like woke math, and we'll actually touch on that just a tiny bit later on as well.
Yes.
You mean you say that two plus two? Yeah, I used to teach math, and if you thought that 2 and 2 is 5, I'd say I'm sorry, but you're wrong. Now, if I say that, I'd be a racist.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's so crazy. It's actually funny. I mean,
Yeah.
ultimately,
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah. It's like 2 plus 2 equals 4, and there's a rebuttal, and it's check your position.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this is the craziest thing that's going on now, but we're finally getting some big changes. People have talked about changing the system, and we're going to find all about kind of what Larry thinks about this, and talk about it. But to me, I've never seen in my lifetime at least the attempted changes that are happening. I mean, we've seen all of these issues with the Department of Education, just seeming to be a mouthpiece for the teachers unions, and kind of just causing education to get worse and worse over time. But Leon, maybe you could bring up the visual. Trump has literally ordered a dismantle of the Department of Education. So it is something that will take an act of Congress to finalize, but this is something where it's kind of ground shifting. People have talked about this since Reagan. And Larry, before you jump in, let me show the videos real quick so people can see sort of what we're talking about. That this is happening. So Leon, can you play KOL 1 real quick?
My guess is that the best move for the quality of life in America in the future might very well be this establishment of this new Department of Education.
The budget plan I submit to you on February 8th will realize major savings by dismantling the Departments of Energy and Education.
I told Linda, I hope you do a great job and put yourself out of a job.
Well, President Trump today signed an executive order that begins the process of closing the Department of Education. With that, let's bring in Secretary of Education Linda McMahon. She leads that agency. We don't know for how long.
So there you go. That's some of the issues that are happening right now. And let's show KOL 2 real quick so we can hear the new Secretary of Education just talk about just a little bit about what this means. So Leon, can you play KOL 2?
Well, Brett, thank you very much for having me this evening. I can tell you we know that the task ahead certainly has some hurdles, but what my desire is, and what I'm going to be working to do, is to work in conjunction with Congress. I think if we can show them that the best plan is to have states in control of education for their communities, for their students, for their teachers, for their parents, that is the best thing, because the president believes, as do I, that the best education is closest to the student, and we can accomplish that by having it operate out of the state and not trying to manage it from Washington, D.C., which clearly, Brett, that hasn't worked. The Department of Education was set up in 1980 by President Carter. We've spent almost $3 trillion. We've seen our scores continue to decline. We're doing something wrong. We need to change.
So there you have it. And Larry has written about this recently. And so, Larry, tell us, what do you think about this, potentially seismic move on education?
Well, okay, I don't think it is seismic. Thank you. It is a perfect lead-in for what I want to say. He is indeed trying to get rid of the DOE rather. He doesn't want to eliminate all its functions. He wants to keep funding, like Pell Grants, Title I funding, and provide funding and resources for students with disabilities to other parts of the government. So he's just moving things around. I mean, it's like, who's going to manage what the DOE did? This is not a big deal. It's a bureaucratic restructuring. It doesn't get rid of programs. It doesn't cut funding, and it doesn't close any school. It's just a change in the administration, not a change in the programs and services funding delivered to America's schools. Part two is that Trump is going to need 60 senators to vote to abolish the DOE, and he ain't going to get that. So all this is just nothing more than bad theater, in my opinion. This is like a non-story that is just. I mean, I read tons of education stuff every day. I mean, this is the subject, and it's just baloney. Frankly, it's just not a big deal. Yeah, some bureaucrats going to lose their job. Good. But beyond that, not much is going to change. I mean, the freak out is just amazing, especially the teachers' unions. Oh, the poor kids are going to, not be have any food. I mean, it's just craziness. So it's just a non-issue in my book.
So Larry, are you saying the Department of Education is going to be 5 years, 10 years from now will exist in some form?
Well, before we had the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and Jimmy Carter as a SOP to the NEA, but it established the DOE 45 years ago. But it's not in the day-to-day life of people and teachers and children. Not much is going to change. I'm sorry. I'd love to get rid of the whole thing. I don't think the government should be involved in education. Period. I mean, when you go shopping for food, you don't go shopping for food down at the local government store. You go to the private market that gives you the best food for the best prices. Why don't we do the same thing in education? That would be a real move. That'll never happen. That's my goal. That's my dream.
Well, and that does bring up, I guess, something about the idea that this being a national, federal entity now, and maybe towards pushing this stuff more, the decision making more to the states. I mean, that sounds to be at least like what Linda McMahon was saying, is that this will give more state control. And if we do have more state control, and by the way, they also sound like too, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in the show, but that they're going to be pushing for more school choice, or to make things easier to facilitate school choice. So in the end, doesn't this offer the chance of maybe 50 laboratories of experimentation versus kind of one big, central planner?
That could happen, but first of all, as I said, the DOE is not going to go away because they need 60 senators, and you're just not going to get it. I mean, if you need a majority, you might, but you need 60, so that it's just not going to happen. Secondly, there are some good things that Trump wants to do, like sort of, pushing states in the direction of school choice is a good thing. There are individual parts of this that are good. Getting rid of bureaucrats who, paper pushers, literally paper pushers, is a good thing. It'll save us some money. So there are some good things that Trump is doing, but just the writ large getting rid of the DOE, I don't see as a big deal. I just don't.
And this follows up to something Leon just said a second ago, but I guess in terms of, Trump saying he's dismantling it, and because it won't be able to go away unless Congress supports him on it, then does this risk really just an executive order here where essentially DOE will just be behaving differently until potentially the next Democrat president comes in, and then it's all going to change direction at that point again and become the same DOA or DOE that we've all come to know and love that's not doing much for our kids?
I suspect you're right, Jason. That's a good thought, and that sounds exactly what would happen. Yeah, it's going to depend on who's president, which party's in power, and how big they want the government to be, and how much they're in debt to the teachers' unions. I think that pretty much says it all.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, I have to say, Larry, even though it sure sounds like you're right, and you're speaking from a sense of authority on this matter, it's somewhat depressing to hear what they just said.
So sorry to give you the bad news, Leon, but I think it's true. I mean, I'd love to be wrong too, but I mean, just the amount of press that this thing has gotten, and just the as I said, the freaking out and the pearl clutching and the, oh my God, children are going to be dying in the street. I mean, come on, let's put this into perspective.
Well, and to think it literally was just Jimmy Carter who established this thing that we saw in the video. And so not a lot has changed in education since the Department of Education, other than the fact that it's gotten a little bit worse.
No, it's gotten bigger. It's gotten bigger and it's gotten worse. Yes.
Yeah.
The issues is school. The biggest issue now, if we're not going to get the government out of education completely, is school choice, universal school choice, where every parent can spend the public tax dollars on the best school for their child. Now, children are different, and some children, need more discipline. Some children need, love math. Some children like to write and read. Send the kids to, call it a niche school that specializes in these individual areas, and get rid of the, what I call ZMS, zip code mandated education system, where you send your kid to the school that's down the street from you. I mean, once again, I'll use the supermarket analogy. You don't go to the supermarket that's right down the street from you if they're serving rancid vegetables and bad meat. You send it, maybe there's one 3 blocks away that serves, better food, fresher food at a cheaper price. So you send your kid there. Why do we have this zip code BS? It's a terrible system, and it's got to go.
Yeah. Well, that said, this takes it just a little bit out of order, but let's jump into the school choice issue. And this is, Leon, maybe you could bring up the visual again. So part of what President Trump has talked about in coming into office is he's been a big promoter of school choice. So he talks about in the White House's webpage, they talk about expanding educational freedom and opportunity for families. And that is one of the big aspects of this, is to encourage more school choice, so that's definitely going to be something that is promoted in this administration. And he has a fact sheet that talks a little bit about sort of what's going on with education right now. They also, this is the first time too, I think the Department of Education has put out something that celebrates school choice, because I don't think they have. Larry, maybe you might have seen something different over the years, but I don't recall ever seeing the Department of Education celebrating school choice.
I used to be on the planning committee for National School Choice Week for many years. And this is I both, to the best of my knowledge, it's the first time, and that's a good thing. I mean, Trump can be a cheerleader, but let each state do its own thing, and states are responding. I mean, all in all, now there are over a million students who are participating in private school choice programs, and it's climbed rapidly. I hate to say it, but God bless COVID in that sense. I mean, I'm not praising the pandemic and the craziness, but it was the craziness that led to this great uptick in school choice. It's been on the uptick for many years, but the COVID hysteria gave it a huge boost.
Well, this is something that, we do have a little bit of a video snapshot as well, too, of Linda McMahon talking about the way Trump is going to be viewing school choice, and I think it's worth at least hearing out of the administration's mouth. Leon, can you play KOL 4?
We want to make education better for children. The president is an absolute proponent of school choice, and we are going to work very hard to make sure that children are not held prisoner in failing schools. Over the past couple of days, I have toured charter schools throughout the state of Florida, and I went to one school that's called a classical school, where they were really back to basics with their multiplication tables and reading by phonics, returning to the science of reading. These children were absolutely joyous in their classroom. They were having fun. The teacher was having fun.
Well, joyous, that's certainly something that doesn't describe my experience going through the government monopolized school system. So, hopefully this is going to lead to some, better stuff. But I mean, that ultimately, that's kind of what you're talking about, Larry. I mean, we're not, going to, when I think of buying food, I don't think about going to the government cafeteria in my neighborhood. Right? It sounds kind of like communism, right? Getting in the bread lines for your education, essentially, and getting just about as poor of a result too.
Exactly. Oh, can you imagine if the government? Oh God. Yeah, no, when you look at communist countries, and that's what's going on, and it's that's why in Berlin they had to build a wall to keep people in.
Exactly.
Usually build
this is
walls
just
to
like
keep people out. There, they built a wall to keep people in because it was they know it's such a horrible system and people hated it. Obviously.
Well, and it's funny too because that's the rhetoric of when you hear like, oh gosh, I can't. That Weingarten, the teachers union, National Teachers Union president, yeah, and essentially they're trying to build that wall to keep everybody in the current system. Exactly. I mean, they hate what is happening here, and quite frankly, that is one good sign when Trump is talking about getting rid of or dismantling this Department of Education, and you see the way Randy Weingart has been squealing about this, in disdain. That's, if nothing else, it's worth that.
Squealing is right. That's a perfect word for old Randy.
Yeah. But this is the issue, is that we've talked about this before on the program, but when you get at least school choice, you're getting competition, and ultimately that's going to lead to metrics that parents can understand, which is, hey, if kids coming out of this school are becoming doctors and lawyers and they look good in 10 years, that's the school I want my kid going to, right? I mean, the idea that it's just the metric of the alumni, and that's what we'll eventually get if it's all a school choice thing. Whereas we right now what's your zip code? That's the biggest question.
Yes, exactly.
But we have a ways to go. Granted, things are getting better, but it's a very slow move, even though we did get a push, as I said, from the COVID situation. But still, 3/4 of children are enrolled in a public school, or more accurately, a government-run school. And we got to sort of move that ball more. I mean, maybe Trump can do that. If he does that, maybe be his biggest accomplishment.
Yeah, and that's the main.
Jason, just a cutting for a little bit. 32:45 is when you'll jump off of public access. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. So anyway, as far as as far as that goes, and you just derailed my train of thought. But anyway, so let's talk about school performance, I guess, and sort of how the schools are currently doing, and that's one of the things you just sort of mentioned, Larry, is that hey, schools have sort of gotten a little bit derailed, through COVID, although the rail they were on wasn't really heading in a great place anyways. But let's look at the national assessment plan. In fact, we do have just a little bit of a video as well of Linda McMahon talking about the current state of schools and how they're doing. So let's check that out, and then we'll check some of these NAEPS scores. So Leon, can you play KOL 3?
And just to put some stats on it, you were born in New Bern, North Carolina, which is Craven County, North Carolina. That's a rural region. And if you look at the math and reading scores, and we have this graphic here, 21 to 24, you can see math in 21 and 22, and reading 51.6, 49.9, and then 23, 24 actually goes down, 46.5 to 48.6. That tracks other places around the country that have seen proficiency go down despite the level of money going up.
Well, I think that's been the president's, hue and cry. He said we are spending more money per pupil than any country in the world, and we're seeing less results. That's a clear indicator that we are not doing the best thing we can do for our students. I do think returning to basics is the best way to do it. We need to teach math and English and literacy and writing. We don't need to teach ideology. We have to let teachers teach. I have such respect for our teachers. I think that it's the most noble profession in the world, and I have seen what can happen when teachers are allowed to teach and to be innovative and be creative in their classrooms. Brett, for every dollar that goes into the school system, the federal funding, it's been reported to me that almost 47 cents of that dollar is spent in regulatory compliance. Teachers, they don't want to stay. They're leaving the profession because they are bogged down by regulation. Let's lift that burden and let them do what they do best, which is teach.
And so what we were seeing there is she was showing us some of the NAEPS scores. That's a national assessment. Oh gosh, I can't remember the entire acronym there.
Educational progress.
Yeah. And so it's like a report card, essentially, is what they call it. And so, Leon, maybe you could bring up the visual here, but you can actually go check this out online, the NAEPS report card. And essentially, it kind of shows some of those trends similar to what to what our Secretary of Education was talking about. But I mean, we see this dip recently, and some of that corresponds to COVID times. But it really is not that impressive what's happened since the Department of Education. I mean, I think this is about where Department of Education started, and we seem to be finishing a little bit below in this trend. But this is the California. By the way, you can check these results out as well by state. And so they talk about whether they're going up or down in the, grades 4 through 8, or grades 4, 8, and 12, I guess. But 4 and 8 is what they usually talk about. And you can see where students are scoring, at these different levels. But so, Larry, what does this all mean as far as our current progress in schools? I mean, how are we performing? As you've been watching this through the years, and is dire as sort of what we've been hearing the Secretary of Education say, or is it worse?
Dire is a good word, Jason, or it may be worse than dire. I mean, just to sum up, I mean, you show some of this, on your graphics. In 2019, 35% of fourth graders scored at or above in reading proficiency standard. And that figure dropped to 33% in 2022 and down to 31% in 24. In other words, the kids are getting dumber. And the percentage of fourth graders at below basic was the largest in 20 years at 40%. Below basic. I mean, that's ridiculous. Also, we just see the reading and math scores here. Also, it's very important to note that the results of the latest NAEP U.S. history test taken in 22 are also telling. And this test means that kids can explain major themes, periods, events, people, ideas, and turning points in the country's history. You know how many 8th graders are proficient there? 13%. 13% of 8th graders are proficient in history. So when these kids go to vote, they don't know what the issues are. They don't know anything about the Constitution. They don't know anything about the Bill of Rights. They don't know anything about the Declaration of Independence. It's pathetic.
Yeah.
So,
well, and this is one of the things I just wanted to draw people to from what you were saying here on the scores as well. Because people may see this first score and think, oh, well, 70, that's not too bad, at or above basic. But basic is not proficient. That's the crazy thing. I mean, proficient is what, say, if the school is even coming close to succeeding. And keep in mind, they're the ones who set the standard at what proficient is, right? So it's their own metric.
And 35% are at or above proficient, which means 65% are not. So 2 out of 3 kids aren't doing it good enough or well enough. Yeah. Excuse me.
Public access, Jason.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And if you're watching this currently, there's more to come, but you're going to have to check it out on public access if you're watching us on public access. Anyway, back to the show. One of the things I guess that when I look at this particular metric as well is the idea that, I mean, it's really, I guess it's misleading a lot of times when they wind up putting this stuff in the news, because a lot of times they say, how did they do relative to the last couple of years when they tested previously? So it looks like, oh, we're doing just a little better, we're doing just a little worse, right? But the real story is here. The idea that 70% are failing proficiency. Right. And would we tolerate any other system if you went to buy phones or cars and it was a 70% failure rate? Would we all be saying, give me more of that?
Exactly.
It's just terrible. Oh,
there's a very famous graph that it's somewhere wrong. It's not my original thought, but you see, if you look at average teacher salary, it's going up, it's going up, it's going up, it's going up, it's going up. You see that. But then at the same time, you look at the test scores, correspondingly, it's going down, it's going down, it's going down, it's going down. So these two cross with teacher salary always going up, average teacher salary always going up, but the test scores always going down. So we are paying the teachers more to deliver a more crappy product. This is unbelievable. which gets back to your point. Would we tolerate that if we are buying food from our local grocery store, or buying phones from T-Mobile or whoever it is we buy our phones from? We would never tolerate anything like that. But yet we tolerate it in the education of our children.
You said it all, Leon, perfectly. The only thing I can add, we have to look at the teachers' unions here and their compliant people in various state houses across the country. Teachers are not paid by the quality of the work they do. They're paid for years on that job. And the other way you can get more money is by taking a certain, what are called professional development classes, which are a joke. I mean, when I got my teaching credential here in California, I got all A's. I snoozed through every class. I barely did any work, and I got all A's and 1 B. I mean, the classes are a joke, and just by being on the job, you don't have to do a better job. Your kids can all be failing, and you go your next year's anniversary, and you get more money. It's crazy. No, nobody else does this. You don't do a job working in a supermarket or in a clothing store, you're out the door. You better sell clothing. You better sell food, but not in education. And I dare say that education is a little bit too important to be treated in such a silly and haphazard way.
Indeed.
Well, one of the funny things I have seen too as a parent is the metrics are kind of murky as far as what success is. I've seen, especially when my kids were in elementary school, it wasn't even the standard A, B, C, D, F grading that I was kind of used to as a parent, as a kid when I was in school. There was all these things like, proficient, or, needs, I don't know. There were all these different types of, like, there was an S, there was a P, it's almost like they were playing with the metrics because maybe people, to keep people from getting wise about how their kid was doing.
Yeah, exactly.
There's definitely grade inflation where, you don't want to hurt a kid's feelings and he's really illiterate, but you give him a B in reading.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a standard grade inflation and deflection, and you call it different things. And then all the political stuff, which we haven't gotten into, is obviously part of the problem, because when kids are, they're learning about, CRT and BLM instead of their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s. So it's understandable that a lot of kids aren't going to be improving in the things that the parents send them to schools for.
Yeah. One of the things too, I think, is the ultimate metric of failure is the idea that, a lot of people will come out of school with these degrees and they're so worthless that they mean almost nothing to an employer when they see them. And then to top it off, a lot of these alumni wind up being, out there asking for support for minimum wage and other things like that in a society. It's almost like, hey, I've had 12 years of government education. Now I need the government to set a floor on my wages because what they taught me isn't going to do better than, isn't going to get me a salary I can live on, essentially. So it's just a really sad statement, I guess. But maybe part of the reason why it's gotten this bad is because of the focus that education has been on. That kind of brings us into, some of the indoctrination that we've seen in the schools. And Larry has written a little bit about that, but I did have a couple of little videos to give people a sense of what's going on. Now, Trump has literally said, hey, at least on a few of these things, he is stopping some of the issues with, girls participating in boys sports, which isn't, hugely an educational related thing, but it does happen within education. But one of the bigger things is he's put his foot down on DEI, and he says, look, there's going to be no more DEI in education. And we have a video of a real quick snippet of what's happening there. Leon, can you play KOL 5?
Now to the White House, schools and universities have less than 2 weeks to eliminate diversity initiatives or face losing federal funding. The Trump administration's memo sent out on Friday orders an immediate halt of any practice that factors in race, from admissions to financial aid to hiring. It's all part of President Trump's broader push to end DEI programs in America. Schools have until February 28th to comply.
And I just wanted to give a little bit of a video here too on some examples of what's going on out there, because it's easy for us to tell you about it, but to show you really helps better, I guess, as we're trying to educate you on this issue. And hopefully we'll do a better job than the government schools on this. But maybe, Leon, could you play KOL 6? Because this is woke math, and we've shown this one before, but it's just beyond belief. Something like mathematics, how they can screw that up, something that should be very objective, and somehow they want to inject all their ideology into that. So KOL 6.
California has adopted a new mathematics curriculum that critics are calling woke math. The framework focuses on big ideas, social justice, and equity, according to supporters. Critics, however, say the focus should be numbers. National correspondent William Lajeunesse takes a look from Los Angeles.
Let's see if my math matches your math.
A controversial math curriculum taking root in California as reformers this month overcame strong opposition from math and science educators.
It definitely will not help them learn math better. I've been teaching math for 43 years, and I can say with certainty that this will cause a great deal of confusion and set students back.
7 divided by 7, let's go. The new framework urges teachers to focus on historically marginalized people and take a justice-oriented perspective by changing course material with less emphasis on problem solving.
So less emphasis on problem solving in a math class. But before we jump into anything else, there was a scandal that happened here locally in near the Sacramento area in Natomas just a few years ago. That Project Veritas blew the lid off of it, where they had a teacher who was literally pushing ideas of not just like DEI stuff, but issues of communism and trying to get people energized to go out to Antifa rallies and other things like that. Leon, can you play KOL 7? Because this is just absolutely nuts, but this is the kind of thing that's happening in some of your classrooms out there.
When the story broke last year, the district described Gabriel Geip's actions as, quote, inappropriate and, quote, irresponsible. The district immediately took steps to part ways with the then Intercom High School history teacher after a heavily edited video showed clips of Gabriel Geip talking about Antifa and hung political posters in his classroom with hopes of turning his students, he said, into revolutionaries. Now, if you remember, KCRA 3 Investigates obtained these photos showing Geip stamped his students' assignments with the face of Kim Jong-un, hung posters inside the classroom meant to divide students by their political ideologies, and encourage students to attend civic activities for extra credit, some of which were deemed unsafe, among other issues. Today, we received a copy of the settlement between the Natomas Unified School District and Gabriel Geip. Officials agreed to pay Geip $190,000.
So get caught teaching communism, make $190,000.
What's the problem with that, Jason?
That sounds like woke math to me. But Larry, you've been writing up this stuff, and Leo, maybe you could bring up the visuals. But you've had a few recent stories where you talked about uncivil education, some of the Marxism that's being pushed in the classrooms, and the latest in DEI and CRT and gender issues. Let me pop back to that uncivil education article there too. So, what's going on, I guess, in the classrooms? And what have you seen as far as this ideology creeping into the classes?
Well, education, as I've often said, is a fad-filled field, on the alliteration. And it's always something, whether it be DEI, CRT, BLM. I mean, the alphabet soup is endless. And you might think of these as cults or political movements, cultural Marxism. And there's an element to all of the above. That said, parents hold the key here, because in the little video that you just played, if a parent goes to visit that school, which they should do as much as possible, and they see something like this, they need to raise bloody hell, go to the principal. The principal doesn't do anything. Go to a school board, go to the media. Don't just send your kid off there every day, because your kid's going to come home as a commie.
Yeah.
They could come home as a commie. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to add in there too that we saw that video from KCRA and they acted like this was their investigative video, but the news is not really looking in on this. The only reason that blew up is because Project Veritas blew that up. They literally did one of those exposés where they interviewed the teacher to ask him, they have these kind of honeypot type things and others where they'll get some public official to spill the beans about the crazy stuff they're doing. And what they did in that particular particular one is they had this teacher sitting in there telling him, to the hidden camera, all these things about him, energizing these students out to go out and participate in Antifa rallies and stuff for extra credit in the classroom. And we wonder why they're not learning math and they're failing at all these other things. But boy, we sure are seeing our cities burn.
Oh yeah.
But I have to go back to the parents, because as I mentioned earlier, if a parent is talking to the kid every day about what they're learning in school, and the kid tells what their classroom is like to a parent, I'm that parent. I go to school and I raise bloody hell. I just don't send my kid back there the next day and assume that something's going to change. I don't want my kid to come home and be a Marxist, or I don't want my little boy to come home and think he's a little girl. This is craziness. And I realize parents have a lot on their plate, but they must become more involved. And that way, things like this either won't happen or they'll happen with much less frequency.
Indeed. I mean, I've told this story before. Back in my day when I grew up in a foreign country. Obviously, you can tell from my accent. But the point is, though, I couldn't dare go home and tell my father, I can't learn math because my teacher is white, which I had a few of those, or my teacher is Indian. I had teachers who were Indian also, and all that kind of. You think I could go tell my father, well, I will learn better. I will learn math a little bit better. And my father was not a very educated man. You think that I will learn better if I had a teacher who, quote unquote, looked like me? I couldn't go home and tell my father this nonsense. I could not. But nowadays, this seems to be, this is the kind of thing that is going on. And parents, and the reason for that, obviously, and Larry, you're so right, parents are not involved as they should be. I mean, we've seen some of that change because of COVID. You're absolutely right on that. But parents are not as involved. We're not trying to find out what exactly is going on in the schools with their children. And this is one of the big failures, I think, that we as parents are not doing in relation to our children's education.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're right.
No, it's nuts, and it winds up leading to these crazy things, like whether it be a teacher like that suddenly your kid is going off to these types of Antifa rallies or something. And by the way, just in case for our viewers, in case you don't remember what Antifa was, they were essentially one of the organizations back in that summer of love in 2020 that was burning down the cities. So, and for social justice, that's what, that kind of a movement about. So it's kind of nuts. But, some of the things that were linked in your stories, like this is, Larry, this is one from Virginia School District stands by inclusive policies after allowing male sex offender in a girl's locker room. I mean, this is nuts. I mean, when you talk about some of this gender stuff, it's and certainly some of these, other stories too, about how you have, all of these different DEI related jobs in the schools, and it's just kind of nuts. And that does make me kind of wonder, and I wanted to ask you, but we've seen this kind of creep of terms like CRT, critical race theory, and now diversity, equity, inclusion. Before, I think it used to be affirmative action, all of these different terms. Is this just like when people start putting heat on one of these, then it just kind of sort of morphs and goes away and pops up somewhere else as something else?
Fans have a shelf life.
When everybody first heard of CRT, nobody heard DEI, and then CRT got a lot of heat, and then suddenly
you guys might be too. You remember hula hoops?
Yes.
Yeah, they were fad for a while, and then something else. Remember chia pets? I mean. It depends on the age of the audience. I mean, back in my parents' day, people used to swallow goldfish for a while. They used to sit on top of flagpoles. And that's what education is like these days. It's full of fads. Just to show you how widespread CRT is, 36% of high schoolers, this is according to an Education Next survey, a responsible company, 36% of U.S. high schoolers say their teachers either often or almost daily argue that America is a fundamentally racist nation. Also striking is that 43% of teachers use the term systemic oppression. These are fads, and this is what the students are learning. And until I say it one more time, until parents get hip to this, nothing's going to change.
You know, and this is what I'm sorry, Jason. This is
you go ahead, Leon.
Okay, this is what the main thing is, and you know, Larry, you're hitting everything the nail on the head every time here. Is that too much indoctrination and too little education is going on in our public schools right now, and you are so right that the parents got to get more involved with what's going on in the schools. I mean, we have this dangerous ideology of transgenderism, which has been promoted in the schools, that is going on. And I think some parents don't really understand the dangers that are going on with this thing. Through the summer of love, we were hearing about these mostly peaceful protests. To just think about that, when there were 575 riots officially declared. And this nonsense, this social justice nonsense is being taught to our children who think, oh my God, they're living in this racist society that is systemically oppressed and all this sort of nonsense. God help us.
You know, Leon, you brought up the sexual stuff, and here in California's got to be the worst. I mean, there's a law, AB 1955 on the books, which says that if little Johnny starts calling himself Jane at school, the teacher is not allowed. Not that the teacher has a choice, the teacher's not allowed to tell the parent.
Right.
And now there's a legal battle going on about this, thank God. But I mean, a few years ago, people would have said, you're nuts. But this is what goes on. And granted, California is really wackafornia, but it's, you know, the disease is permeated throughout the country. You know, it used to be said, what starts in California doesn't stay in California. Boy, in this sense, that's true, and it's certainly not a good thing.
It's true.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you know, this is one of the things that worries me a little bit, is that Trump has this focus where he has, you know, put the kibosh on DEI, but I mean, I'm just wondering, will this then essentially lead to just a rebranding where they just get away from, you know, his ban, and then suddenly it's all back again in 4 years. It's just not called DEI anymore, and you know, we just never get rid of this stuff.
Bingo, you got it, Jason. Yeah, it's going to be. It's already colleges are doing this. I don't remember exactly what they're calling it, but yeah, they're changing the name, but the philosophy is still there. So they're just undergoing a name change.
Yeah,
you know, it's sort of like Adolf Hitler changing his name to Joe Smith. He's still an evil guy. I hate to bring up Hitler, but you know.
Yeah, it's the same old goose step, just a different name.
It's true. It's true. But you know, this is one thing. This is one thing about the left. I mean, whether we're talking about education, environmentalism, whatever it is we're talking about, one thing the left is very good at is rebranding. I don't care what it is we're talking about. They could always rebrand with some nice sounding words to make everybody believe, oh, they just care about our kids. They just care about the poor and the oppressed. They could always rebrand. And you know, one of the greatest rebrand, I know we're not talking about abortion today, but one of the greatest rebrands that we see going on here in society is this thing where they tell us, it is not abortion. We're just talking about reproductive health. And this is the rebranding that's going on in our education system. And Jason, you're absolutely right. I'm seeing, you see this DEI that have now become a dirty word, and it's a very dirty word right now. Don't worry, it's gonna come back.
Yeah.
It's gonna come back with a different name, because the left is always good at rebranding.
Yep. Well said, Leon.
Yeah.
You got it.
Thank you.
I really don't have anything to add.
Well, yeah, you know, and this does bring up one thing too, though, that the left isn't giving up without a fight on this. And Leon, maybe you could just bring up the visual real quick. But the NAACP has sued, and so has Harvard as well, on trying to keep these DEI things going on. Well, with Harvard, it's slightly different. I think there's an issue of an anti-Semitism thing coming down from the Trump administration.
Yes.
But the bottom line is they are, you know, the schools are starting to push back to keep some of these programs. And in this case, it's the National Association of Colored People that is suing the Department of Education to keep DEI funding in the schools. So, Larry, is this something that you think they have any chance of being successful on, or or are they just going to have to wait for the rebrand?
It's a good question, and I honestly don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of all the legalities, but if it's not successful, they will definitely rebrand it, give it DEI a different name, different initials, different name. It'll be kinder and gentler sounding, but it'll still be the same old BS, frankly. And
Yes.
but to answer your question, I don't know if they're going to be successful or not. That's beyond my pay grade. I don't think anybody knows, really.
Well, I would say there will be some lunatic judge who might let us go forward, and probably it might be successful at the district level, and then probably when it on appeal, it probably will not be successful. But the rebranding will be going on along with all of that. So who knows where it's all going to end up?
Right. Yeah. There's always appeals, and then maybe it'll wind up in the Supreme Court, and it'll be years. It could be years before we have anything definitive.
Indeed.
Well, this does take us to another topic I guess I wanted to jump into, and that is, one of the changes that we see going in the wrong direction. Well, that's kind of everything with government education, but this one has been raising some eyebrows recently, is all the violence that we're seeing in the schools. And Leon, maybe you could bring up the visual, but Larry's been writing about that. He had, an article, Mounting Disobedience in Our Schools. And you can just see this stuff. I mean, it's in the headlines every day. We just had about a day ago or 2 days ago, Florida State University, a kid wound up shooting a few people and killing some. We just had a track meet in Texas where one kid stabbed another to death because they were sitting in the wrong tent. We have some other a few videos as well, just to characterize some of this violence that is just, I remember getting in a few fights when I was in school, but it's nothing like some of the stuff I'm seeing today. Leon, can you play KOL number 8? This is a beatdown that happened in Florida. I believe this is in Florida, where you see these kids fighting, and the level of violence just seems just through the roof.
This is also new for you tonight. 7 people have now been arrested after this massive fight broke out near Slam Charter School in Little Havana Thursday. The brawl scene here resulted in 2 students being sent to the hospital after their brutal beating. One of them transported with cuts to his face and is in stable condition. So far, though, it's unclear what prompted this fight.
So these videos are coming out almost daily, and it's not just even the kids. It'd be bad enough if it was just the kids. We're seeing the teachers and and not the teachers and the parents, but the teachers and the kids getting into some of these things. Leon, can you play KOL 9? This is another school. I believe this one's in North Carolina, and this happened just this year, where a teacher and a student are fighting over a cell phone.
A North Carolina substitute teacher and student are both charged with simple assault after a fight in the classroom, and this happened Monday. School officials say the incident stemmed from an argument after the teacher confiscated the student's cell phone. The video shows the student complaining that the substitute teacher did not keep anyone else's phone. Then the student appears to attempt to grab the phone from the teacher's hand. The two argue that the confrontation then gets physical, with both swinging at each other and the substitute teacher ending up on top of the student. The teacher received a written promise to appear in court and was released.
And as bad as that video is, I mean, there's teachers who are literally just being gang assaulted in some of these schools, which is nuts. There was one that just happened a few weeks ago. Leon, can you play KOL 10, where this teacher was it was a conspired attack. They'd planned to attack this one teacher. Can you show KOL 10?
Caught on camera, fists flying at Dillard High School. 2 students seen attacking a teacher.
And they're now facing charges as we learn more about that brutal beating. And Local 10's Terrell Forney live now at Fort Lauderdale with the fight and the video. Terrell.
And that teacher complained of some injuries after this attack. Punches are repeatedly thrown in this video, all against the teacher who was already on the ground. The man wearing navy blue is a substitute at Dillard High, and the teen wearing all black is a student. The violent fight playing out in front of a rowdy crowd on campus.
They had problems with like a substitute teacher and they just jumped him.
2 students have since been arrested. Javis McClover, seen on the left, and Roderick McQueen on the right. Both are 19, and each now charged with battery on an educator.
And so I guess when I was a student, I mean, there might be some fights, but it seemed like, you know, maybe somebody'd get punched in the face a few times, you'd fall down, and that was the end of it. And that was just part of growing up, you know, some of these boys will be boys things. This is nuts. I mean, people are on the ground and they're just delivering beatdowns that don't end. Or don't end without an ambulance. It seems like. I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on some of this? I mean, this just seems really, really disturbing.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, a recent survey done by Education Week found that 72% of educators say that students in their classroom, school, or district have been misbehaving a little, 24%, or a lot, 48%. More since 2019, which is right before COVID. So COVID may have had an effect on part of this, but the question then becomes what to do. And there has to be a very strict, as with adults, there has to be strict consequences, not a slap on the wrist. Okay, we're going to suspend you for 2 days. I mean, this is what they used to do in my school. Oh boy, kid goes home, and then they come back to school after 2 days and they say, well, what did you do for the last 2 days? Oh, I watched TV.
Yeah.
But that's punishment. Wow. I mean, we've got to have much stricter punishment. I'm not sure exactly what, but there's got to be detention. In my school, we had a former drill instructor as a guidance counselor. It was really a discipline counselor. And what he would do is make kids stand up and face the back of the room. And he used to turn up the heat. And it was I'd walk in the room and it was really uncomfortable. So those kids did not like going to we'll call him Mr. Thomas's room, because they did, there was a consequence. So my point being that we need consequences. There are no consequences are a dirty word these days. Now we just pat them on the head and chalk the problem off to racism or something, or poverty or whatever crap they're blaming it on these days.
You see, and this is the problem. When I was growing up, I could not go home and even tell or have a teacher call my father and tell him, Leon did something in school and we have to suspend him, even for a day. That could not happen. No way. No, sir. Okay. Because it's not that nowadays, I think many parents will go to school and want to cuss out the teacher, want to cuss out the principal and blah, blah, blah. My father will just want to know what I did, why I did it, and end of discussion of what he's going to do to me. Okay?
Exactly. And that's what a parent is supposed to do, Leon. But schools can do things too. I mean, if the kids were made to wear uniforms, or at least maybe a tie and a white shirt and black pants, it doesn't have to be exactly a uniform, and and not talk when they're going into class. It's something called the no excuses model, which incorporates all this kind of behavioral changes, and we should do that, especially in schools that need to. Well, in the schools that are the videos you're just playing, we need to get to those kids early in life. Middle school might be too late. It needs to start like in kindergarten.
Indeed.
And it's more regimentation. I don't want to turn out robots, but kids need to understand that they are part of a system, that they have to behave according to the rules of that system. And if we don't do that, they won't adhere to the rules of society. And then you have criminals, basically.
And this is the thing. I mean, I think it's a part of a larger problem that was going on in society, where there's a complete breakdown of discipline, the administration of discipline, and also a complete breakdown of respect for authority. And this is what's going on with these kids. This sense of entitlement that they can do whatever the hell they want when they go to school. Larry, you're right. I grew up with a uniform throughout all my years, all the way through the equivalent of high school. I had to wear a uniform. They used to even make us wear a badge. And God help me if I forget my badge at home one day. You know, and these are the kind of things that used to go on in our school. And I think I turned out okay. I mean, I think so. I mean, if I may say so myself. And I think all peers, I think, turned out okay. But this is going on right now.
I think, well said, Leon. I think it's as simple as that, in a sense. You got to wear a uniform. If you misbehaved, your father let you know when you got home what he thought of it.
Yes.
Two simple things. I mean, the world would change. Why don't we do this?
Yeah. Well, this is one of the things that I just feel like school choice would solve so many of these things, because one of the issues with school choice, and people don't, it's one of the things I guess that Democrats kind of complain about school choice, but it actually would help fix things, is it's not just that the student gets to be selective, but the school gets to be selective too, right? I mean, and the idea that if you are somebody who just refuses to behave, they can just say, well, okay, sorry, freedom of association, we're just not going to have you here anymore. You'll have to find someplace else. And maybe that will be some government bin for the worst of the worst. But the point is that why should everybody else have their education disrupted by people who just refuse to get along in the system, whether it's their parents or themselves? I mean, it's sad, but it's we're sacrificing all for the sake of problem people that aren't being fixed by the current system. So it's really just hurting everybody.
Right.
It's just,
Jason, you're absolutely right. And if we had choice, a parent could, if the kid is sort of acting up at home and show problems, you send that kid off to not a military private school, something similar where they stress discipline, because that kid will need more discipline than his friend next door who's, just calmer and plays by the rules. So, school choice would definitely help that situation.
Indeed. Totally agree.
And one of the cool things about that too is like you're saying, Larry, different people need different things. And when we have choice, that means we have competition, and that means we have solutions for different situations out there. I mean, imagine that. Not every kid is the same, and not every kid learns the same. And maybe there's, some different solutions for different kids out there. But we don't get that with one size fits all government.
Right. And one of the recent fads in schools is, anti-cop. So they want to get cops out of public school. Oh, we don't want people with a gun in a public school. Why not? In my middle school where I taught in the 90s and the aughts, we had a cop with a gun. It was, as a deterrent. We didn't have too many fights. Occasionally it was a fight, but the cop didn't shoot anybody. Exactly. I mean, but the left. Oh no, cops are racist, and it doesn't matter. It could be a black cop, and it doesn't matter. You're still a racist. And they hate guns.
And Larry, let me jump in real quick here, because you had an article that you posted, a link to this California Globe article here, and Leon, maybe you could bring it up. But like Los Angeles School Board is firing 133 police officers. This article is from 2021, so this is a few years dated. But and the idea was they were going to bring in climate coaches, and it's not climate change, which maybe they made it that because they thought it sounded wonderful in their mind that it was created or similar to climate change. I don't know, but they called them climate coaches, and they were community members who will work with students to improve school receptivity and address racial bias. So, I mean, that's, you see a couple guys beating down a teacher, and this is an issue where we have to just kind of understand racial bias. And I mean, we need somebody in that school to stop that beat down. I'm sorry.
Where are your values, Jason? Don't you care about the ozone layer? I mean,
that's right. Yeah. And you don't care that people like us are systemically oppressed. You don't care about that, Jason? Come on.
I guess I need a climate coach.
You need one, badly, obviously.
How do you satirize this? How do you satirize this?
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. But But you had a thing in your article that I thought was really interesting, and this is what happens with competition, I guess. But in England, it said, okay, yeah, one of the things we've seen as a good idea is putting body cameras on police. Well, why not experiment with body cameras on teachers so that you can actually see what the problems are in this? And they were experimenting with that, and it's cutting down the violence. But if you get experimentation, which happens in a market, then maybe you can reach some of these solutions a lot faster. What's your take on the whole body camera thing on teachers?
I've written on this, and I made the exact same case. It helps cops. First of all, it'll keep a rogue cop in line. Second of all, if somebody says, "Oh, the cop beat me up," and then there's a camera, and the cop didn't do it, the camera's a good thing for the cop. In the same way, teachers. I mean, I was once accused of strangling a kid, and I put my hand on his shoulder, and anyway, it all went away. I won't get off into that. But if I had a body camera, it would have been a non-issue. And yeah, and it'll also, as a side benefit, also keep teachers from doing some wacky stuff that they're doing now. Off the record. Well, there's nobody watching me. I'm going to teach my kid that 2 + 2. Teaching 2 + 2 is 5 is okay, and if you don't agree, you're a racist. That kind of thing. Teachers will be less likely to do it with a camera. So yes, I'm all for body cameras.
Yes,
yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, that will stop the posters of Mao in the classroom.
Teachers would think twice, and if they don't, the whole world will find out about it real soon. Yep.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's certainly one of those bad issues that's been going around with the violence in the schools. But what, on kind of a funny note, we're getting near the end of the show, and we wanted to, I guess we like to end on something kind of funny, and this time it is actually something that it takes us right back to our Secretary of Education, something that was kind of funny that came out in the media the other day. And she was talking at a conference on education, and Leon, maybe you could bring this up, but she kind of confused the terms artificial intelligence with A1. So this has kind of gone viral, but we do have a video clip of it, and so let's show it. And it's not really as bad as people have been kind of portraying it to be, but let's see it, Leon. It's KNP1.
AI development. I mean, how can we educate at the speed of light if we don't have the best technology around, to do that? I think it was a letter or a report that I heard this morning. I wish I could remember the source, but that there is a school system that's going to start making sure that first graders or even pre-Ks have A1 teaching, every year starting, that far down in the grades. And that's a wonderful thing. Kids are sponges. They just absorb everything. And so it wasn't all that long ago that we're going to have internet in our schools. Woo! Now, okay, let's see A1 and how can that be helpful? How can it be helpful in one-on-one instruction?
So anyways, this actually led to the A1 steak sauce company even putting out their own little meme on A1 agrees, start them early. And it says, it's the secret sauce for education, apparently.
You have to wonder whose sources she's using, or whose sauces she's using. Sorry for the bad part. That was a painful gag. I winced when I first read that. I really did.
Yeah.
Needles on a block.
She was just talking about the digestion of a good ribeye steak in education, and the steak of education. She was just wondering about those things, and that is why she came up with the A1 sauce of education. So it's just the ribeye steak of education in a good mind is what's going on there.
Well, I feel like the way our current government does education is kind of like when I first heard that Trump puts ketchup on steaks. I was appalled. And that's the way I feel. I feel like I looked behind the scenes and saw our schools putting ketchup on their steaks, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's what they're doing in there! I can't believe it." But one of the things I did think wasn't quite as bad as what it looks like in there is, a lot of the places that are dragging Linda McMahon are actually not showing the little piece I showed at the beginning where she says AI at the beginning. So even though she clearly, had some confusion there, she did kind of at least understand the concept of AI. So it's not she's completely off base.
The concept was correct. It's just that instead of the AI, she said A1, and she said it twice, obviously, which is not a so I mean, but she had the concept correct, though. What she was trying to say, So.
Yeah, no, I mean, we all know what she was trying to say. It's
yes.
Just hope she would have said it a little better, but nobody's perfect.
Yeah, but I will say this though, and I did see this in a little bit of the research for the show. She actually does have just a little bit of background in education. Apparently, she has sat on some school boards before, so this isn't like she's completely disconnected from this. It's like when George Bush put a guy in charge of FEMA who was like a horse rancher or something. He had no experience with emergencies, and of course that all showed up when there was an emergency. But
that was a real issue during Katrina, man. It really was.
Yeah,
no, I have no problem with McMahon at all. I mean, she hasn't said or done anything that has caused me any grief at all.
Yeah,
at least so far. I think I agree with you. Let me just add. I will add so far.
Yeah,
so far. Yeah, yeah. I mean, tomorrow's another day for sure.
Indeed.
If I start seeing her putting ketchup on her steaks, then I'll be a lot more concerned. But so I guess that sort of brings us to the end of the show. Larry, did you have any kind of final words? I wanted to bring up your websites again. Leon, maybe you could bring those up so people can go find Larry's articles. It's at forkidsandcountry.org. It seems to be the best place to find your articles because they're all there, and a huge archive of them. And you have your Teachers Empowerment Network. Is there anything else you want to leave the audience with?
We covered a lot of ground here, and I really appreciate your having me. And the only thing I'll say, and I've said it several times here, is that parents hold the key. They need to wake up and get more involved in their kids' education. Don't just send little Johnny or Janie off to school every day and assume that it's all good. If they're sending them to a public school, it may be, but it may not be. And you need to stay on top of it. That's my best advice.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sounds awesome. Yeah. Don't sublet anything to the government that you don't have to. So, well, thanks so much again, Larry, for joining us, and to our audience, thank you again for joining us. And until the next show, think about what you can do in your community, because they're eroding our liberty at every turn. So you've seen all kinds of people doing all kinds of things. Larry's out there pushing for us on education. You got to pick up the ball or we're going to lose this liberty. So thanks so much. And until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.